Welcome to the Plant Fit Summit, bringing you the best in plant-based health and fitness. This is Luke and Toby, and today we have Boomer Alred. Boomer is a certified unbeatable mind coach, level 2 CrossFit trainer, and also a 4-time National Sports Emmy Award winning director of photography. We start the conversation with Boomer sharing about what mental toughness means to him. Enjoy the presentation.
We call it the big four of mental toughness. It's really like a nice way to look at how you can control your thoughts. So I do a 4-hour session on this called the big four of mental toughness. And we break it down. First is breathing. And that's the foundation to unbeatable mind is breathing. If we can control our breath, we can control our thoughts. So the big four are breathing, positivity, visualization, and goal setting. And when they're put together, they're super powerful. So if you think about it, let's talk about something physical. It's very easy to visualize that. If you have to carry 100 pounds for 400 meters, so first you breathe. So you start breathing, control your breath. Your positivity, since you're controlling your breath, you're in control. You can now control your thoughts and say, I can do this. I can do this. I'm strong enough. It's not that far. If negative thoughts start coming in, that's when you have your breath to say, this is negative. Let's just redirect it. Let's use a mantra. Let's start digging a little deeper. And once you have that breath and that positivity, you roll into visualization. You visualize yourself winning in the mind before you even start the process. And so you could do it before you start the process, or you could actually visualize while you're in the process, getting to your next goal. And that's when we talk about goals and micro goals. Right? You have 100 pounds, you're walking 400 meters, and you see there's a bush that's up a little farther. You decide, I'm going to make it to that bush. That's my micro goal in this 400 meter carry, so, and that's the same thing in life, whether you're doing goals, whether you're doing relationships, it's like you have to set these little micro goals. And the mental toughness, it shows that you have awareness about what you're doing and how you're going about it in a positive manner, and being able to really apply, the positivity for you. If you can break it down to be in control and then have awareness around you, you can get pretty dark. We have a camp called Kokoro Camp. It's a 50-hour, beat down by Navy SEALs. And you have to employ the big four mental toughness over and over, for sure.
I definitely want to get into that as well a little bit later, the Kokoro camp, because I know you graduated from that. So definitely want to get pick your brains on that one. So let's say we apply, if we talk about the big four skills of mental toughness, and for people who are in a stressful situation, whether at work or whether, in lockdowns or emotional issues, how can they apply the big four skills of mental toughness in that scenario?
Breath would be the most important. Really get something down that is a practice, right? So we do box breathing. So we do, you inhale, you hold, you exhale, you hold for an amount of time. But even just, first of all, breathing, nostril breathing is what controls your mind. So having just a practice to return to as an anchor, because there's so much uncertainty now, right? Sometimes it's very certain because you're in your house and you can't go anywhere, but it's uncertain with, where you can go and all that. At least you have your breath that is certain. That's your foundation. That's your rock. So when things do get troubling, when you get anxious, when you start maybe fear, into the fear wolf that we call it, maybe listening to news that can affect you. If you can return back to your breath, and that can help you gather your thoughts. I think that's the most important thing in this VUCA environment, is having that breath, because that's really the true oxygen that feeds your brain, that feeds your body. We can go without water and food for a long time, and I think the world record's like 23 minutes without breath. So it's vital that we do it, and we do it through our nostrils, because there's a lot of physiology that happens when we breathe through our nose in a good way.
23 minutes. That will be a free diver, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think from Spain, I believe. Yeah,
that is
yeah.
absolutely crazy. 23 minutes. You mentioned the fear wolf. I find that
Mhm,
really, really fascinating. Maybe you can contrast that to the courage wolf, and possibly
mhm.
how can people, what is the courage versus fear wolf, and how can people tap into courage a little bit more?
Yeah. So when you think about uh, fear wolf and courage wolf, the question is which wolf are you feeding? Okay, so the more we buy into courage, the more we can be courageous. The more we buy into fear, the more we get deeper and start hiding in a corner. If you think about something, we have what we call a fear and courage loop, right? So if you were to look at a circle and you start out and you think about something you haven't done before, maybe somebody's asking you to do a task, chopping wood, for example. Maybe you've never chopped wood before. And there's a lot of fear on that. You've got an axe in your hand, right? You've got wood flying around. You may have snakes at your feet. You don't know your surroundings. And so if you buy into some self-limiting talk, like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure, you know, what if, the axe doesn't land, and you start limiting yourself, that's buying into the fear wolf. But if you say, I'm going to do a little research, I'm going to ask some questions, maybe to some people who've done this before. I'm going to start buying into some confidence, and you start talking yourself up. That's buying into the courage wolf or the courage loop. And what you do is once you feel that fear happening, we talked about the mantra earlier, that's when the mantra comes in to redirect that fear into courage. So if you're feeling, tightness, and you're feeling like oh man, this is not going to go how I think it's going to go, like a mantra, like I've got this, like something that just gives you that power. And mantras can be found in the darkest of times. Um, and sometimes when you feel all alone and you feel like you're uh, just buying into this fear, a mantra can totally shift your thought pattern, changing when you're feeling fear, right? Fear, you feel like you're starting to cower over. Change your posture, do some exercise, move around, and that can actually get you into your courage loop as well. So there's different ways, cognitive, emotionally, physically. There's ways to change to go from that fear into courage, and sometimes it's just even changing your posture.
I love it. Just changing your posture and really coming back down to the breaths. And what you were saying earlier as well, winning in the mind, because I'm very familiar on what winning in the mind is. Maybe you could share with the audience what you define as winning in the mind.
Visualization is huge in Unbeatable Mind. And once you kind of become one with your practice, with your breathing and positivity, because we want to feed positive images in our mind and our mind's eye. And whether it's a task, we can still go back to the chopping wood. You can close your eyes and see yourself chopping wood. And not only from your perspective, but it's important to take others' perspectives as well. So if you want to succeed at chopping wood, for example, you want to see your point of view. And then you want to see a wider point of view. And then maybe seeing someone watching you and seeing their reaction and how good that you're doing, like cheering you on, like making these visualizations bigger than even the event itself to give yourself even more confidence is important. So winning in the mind, and this can happen, maybe we do AM rituals where we journal, and then we call it dirt diving the day, where you actually sit there and go, okay, here's what's going to happen today. Here's what I can control, right? Because we can't control everything. But if you can think about what you're going to control and visualize yourself succeeding, uh, it'll give you better options when those opportunities come up. Even when you're in a situation where you have two different options, if I do A, this will happen. If I do B, this will happen. If you close your eyes and visualize, and you can do like on YouTube where you scrub fast, you could do a quick visualization to the outcome and say, if I do this, this is, I feel this will happen. If I do this, I feel this will happen. Which is the better outcome that you want to pick? And then choose that path. And when you do visualizations, a lot of times, allow yourself to be open to what comes to you, because if you attempt to steer it in one direction, it may not you may not get the answers that you want. So sometimes we do a thing called the future me visualization, where you walk down a path and you meet your future self. And I know it's very powerful. I've had clients come back and tell me it's powerful, but when they aren't directing the conversation, they just let the conversation come to them. I think that's where a lot of the power comes from. So having a clear mind and an open heart, so when that information comes, you're ready to receive it. And so, like a lot of things in life, don't hang a lot of expectations around it, but rather be ready to receive what comes to you.
Indeed, like my mom always told me since I was a little boy, hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. So it's kind of
Yeah.
optimistic, but at the same time realistic. So I want to get into what you shared earlier about morning rituals or AM rituals, because a lot of entrepreneurs talk about waking up at 5 a.m. Jocko Willing shares his watch at 4:30 a.m.
Right.
And I myself, I've got my own morning ritual. For someone that doesn't really have an AM ritual, who maybe just wakes up and the first thing they reach for is their coffee or their energy drink or their cigarette for that matter, what would you suggest for them to start creating a better AM ritual or morning ritual?
The first thing people reach for normally is their phones, right? So if the first thing you can do, and this is even before you get out of bed, before you reach for anything, is just your first thought can be yours, right? It could be, oh, we're going to do this again. Here we go. It's another Corona day or whatever. But instead actually say, you know what? This is going to be an amazing day. Or whatever your good morning to yourself is. You don't even have to say it out loud. You can just say it to yourself. And, when your feet hit the ground, maybe you say something else. When it comes to morning rituals, I could give you a prescribed morning ritual, so it's like we get up, we have a glass of water because we haven't had anything to drink in 8 hours. So our body is thirsty. We're grateful for being able to walk to the refrigerator rather than having to walk miles for clean water, right? I mean, that's your first thing could be I'm grateful for this glass of water. And then, like to sit down with our breath because it's normally quiet when we get up. Hopefully the house, kids, it's a little quieter. You do some box breathing, connect with yourself, and then we really like to do some journaling and talk about, your thoughts, talk about your day, talk about what you're grateful for. I think that's important. Asking yourself one question: what am I excited to do today? Right. And I always write down my purpose statement, and that's something that takes time to work on. And then some somatic movement, whether that's yoga or qigong or some stretching and light stretching, and just something that gets your breath and your body and your mind connected through movement, the somatic movement. And so that would be an amazing, let's say, 30 minutes to begin your day. But when people start their AM ritual, it's hard for people to just throw everything in. And if they don't do that 30-minute ritual, they feel like, oh, I'm a failure. Well, I would suggest getting one thing to be your anchor. So breath is really important. That I would say if you can have a glass of water and spend some time with yourself with box breathing, it's amazing. For me, it's journaling. I've been journaling for 30 years and I love journaling. So I know if I have a morning where if it's rushed and compressed, I have a plan B, right? Expect for the worst. I know if I journal, I'm going to have a good day because I'm connecting with myself. Socrates said a life unexamined isn't worth living. And I think it's important to sit down with yourself and be honest and answer questions to yourself about what you expect for the day. But there's, morning rituals is a huge topic these days. Everyone talks about how do you set up your morning, and it's what resonates with different people. This is our prescribed, and just like anything, you can modify it. But it's important to do something. We were doing a workout one time, and I just taught some folks how to do burpees, and two teams were competing against each other. One guy was on the ground, he was in a flop sweat, and they were competing, trying to get the most burpees. And the teammate turned and said, "Do anything." And that would be my thing for AM ritual. It's not just do something, but do anything, right? And then create, a little more as you do it. When we begin people in the unbeatable mind, we want them to win, like just in tiny portions. It's kind of like a Kaizen philosophy, like 1% better every day. And if you can, for 3 days, can start with box breathing and then get it into 5 days, and then maybe the following week get some journaling going. Everything doesn't have to happen all at once. And as a matter of fact, we find people fail when they do that. And we don't want that. We want you to just have a small injection of until you become comfortable with it, and then maybe layer on top of it.
I love it. It's all about layering on, and I think it's taken me a while to really layer on almost a 1 hour morning ritual. So for me, my day starts about 4:35, and I feel almost weird if I don't actually start my day that way, because I feel like, oh goodness, if I sleep in, I actually regret not doing it. So I think it just takes a little bit of time. And you brought up journaling as well. Journaling is something that I find that with some people, it seems a little bit abstract. There's obviously things like the 5-minute journal where it says, I'm grateful for this little segments for you to fill up. But some people that I even me included, back in the day when I was starting my journaling process, I found it hard. What do I say? What do I do? What do I write? Because how do you start the journaling process? And you've been doing it for years. Maybe you can share some journal prompts or some tips.
So one thing, especially if people have kids, I'll say, maybe this is a nice way to write down your life so they can read it later. Because if you have young kids, they don't necessarily have the ability to know what you're going through, or what you're experiencing. So if it's an ode to your kids or your grandkids even, right? You think about, man, this would be amazing. You think about your parents, like, wouldn't it be great to go back and be able to read kind of what they went through, to sympathize with them and to understand where they're coming from. So that's one tip that I give parents, especially. Um, you know, I just tell people to write. I mean, part of unlocking our left and right side brain is knocking down that wall of editing ourselves all the time, right? It's a piece of paper and it's a pen, or it's a laptop. I prefer a pen and paper. I like the feel of it. I like everything that happens, that there's something that is different than, sitting in front of your laptop and writing it out. But whatever works. Part of it is just to start, just say, I'm going to write 4 sentences today, or I'm going to fill a page today. I know there's The Artist's Way is a great book that just talks about writing 3 pages a day, like whatever it is. Even if you say, I can't think of anything, for 3 pages, that is supposed to unlock your creative side, because it allows you to stop editing yourself. Like, if you start thinking creatively, you might have a block. And if you allow yourself in the morning, first off, to unlock that communication, you should see growth. I'm going to say one thing that I have added to my practice, which is funny. You start talking about layers of practice. Inside my journal now, I write my purpose statement with my left hand, and I'm right-handed. So it's even a practice within a practice now, because I'm like, wow, I haven't written with my left hand, I don't know, maybe since elementary school. And so now I write, one sentence with my left hand, and it's challenging. And I actually will write what my awareness is after I'm done with that sentence, saying, wow, I wonder what my right hand, I should be doing something, I don't know. It's funny to think about just changing up a little bit. And what is that, like 30 seconds a day? But it's a fun practice for me to look forward to. So who knows, write with your left hand or your opposite hand, and see, maybe that makes it more fun for you.
Or brush your teeth with the opposite hand as well. I've tried that. Brain
Be careful.
neuroplasticity. Yeah. Or shave. Yeah, let's not shave with the opposite hand. I think that's such a great point you brought up. And I haven't actually thought of it myself. Think of it as a parent and writing it as a memoir to your kids. And really, that's what Marcus Aurelius did with meditations as well. It was just a memoir to himself. And now it's it's such a piece which has so much wisdom in it. And he wasn't self-censoring or editing it anyway. He was just writing from the heart. So I think that's such a good point there. So beyond the morning ritual and winning in the mind, I know the other aspect that Unbeatable Mind focuses on is the 5 mountain approach to personal development, which I myself, I've really developed. I'm starting to want to develop different mountains through my own journey. So for those that don't understand what the 5 mountain kind of level of development is, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so we have the 5 mountain. We've come up with a 5 mountain training plan, but we look at ourselves in different different aspects or layers, right? So we're as one whole body. We are physical, obviously, with physical body. We also have the other mountains, which physical, mental. We just talked about, mental toughness, emotional. We have emotional resilience, intuition, and kokoro. So it's physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and kokoro. And kokoro is that it's a Japanese word meaning melding heart and mind in action. It's a warrior, never give up spirit. So to go back to the first part, so physically, when we talk about our physical mountain, we want to talk about what we eat, and I know this is a huge place for what we eat, the sleep that we're getting, the supplements we're taking, everything that goes into our body, how we rest, how we recover, and how we work out. And then as we look at the mental mountain's physical, or I'm sorry, is mental toughness, but it also plays into, what are we reading? What are we listening to? Are we surrounding ourselves with people that are supporting our lifestyle that we want? Um, it's also memory. It's also, um, just the idea of being able to carry on a conversation, just mental toughness, big four mental toughness, like we talked about, breathing positivity, visualization, and goal setting. So that's our second mountain. Our third mountain is um, is emotion, and the idea is not only our emotion, but it's also understanding others' emotions. It's having that emotional intelligence. I know that's a big buzzword, and having the idea of like something's coming up. Is it going to trigger me, and how am I going to deal with it, and how can I understand where it's coming from, and is it something that's useful, or is it something that is holding me back? So doing a lot of emotional awareness is important. Intuition comes from three places: your heart, your mind, and your gut. And we all have had times in our life when we have trusted our gut or have gone against it. And those are great opportunities to go back and recapitulate when you trusted your gut, what was the outcome? Or when you went against it, what was the outcome? So, tapping in, and we do that by spending time in sacred silence, like we talked about, by breathing, and tapping into us. So when those vibrations happen, you actually are in tune with you, instead of saying, "Oh, I feel something, but I'm going to walk into this dark room anyway." It's like, maybe I should wait and get a flashlight and see what's going on in there. And finally, Kokoro Mountain is like I said, it's a never give up spirit. It's when the going gets tough, you start, digging in deep. That's when we're setting goals. We put crucibles there, so it's something, maybe some people call them the BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And so, we put our big crucibles there. But it's also about volunteering. It's about giving to others, taking your eyes off yourself. And so that's kind of where that Kokoro, if we were doing goals, we'd talk about how are you helping others? And also something, for example, we talked about chopping wood earlier. I put things, finding joy in simple things, like writing my purpose left-handed, chopping wood. If you find joy in that, that's really a Kokoro state. It's a warrior state, finding joy in small things. So there's a lot of places, there's some ambiguous places to put goals, but once it's described to people, and we actually send out a questionnaire people can answer, and kind of so they can understand, what would fall into different mountains. But we see ourselves as a whole body individual, whole mind, whole body. So I know some programs just talk about, mental acuity, but this is the whole package, and I think that's important. If you are in a room with the smartest of people, but no one's going to live past 30 because they're not physically healthy, is that really useful? Or if you are so strong you could lift up the world, but you can't have a conversation, you have no emotion, no emotional intelligence. We want to find that, we're looking for that sweet balance where we can show up and actually in all five mountains.
I mean, it's all about integration, as Mark always says, it's about being fully integrated in all those mountains. And I mean, I really want to kind of dive into, especially the emotional mountain, because that's probably a tough one for people to face their own emotions, face the shadow. So I understand that you are a director of photography, and during one of our webinars and sessions, you talked about perspectives, and I found that really, really fascinating about how you take different perspectives, especially as in film, and how you relate that to perspectives with other people, especially in challenging situations with challenging people. And, you know, it's easy to react and it's easy to judge. What can you say about perspectives and how you can almost take a more objective view of a situation?
Yeah. So it returns back to breath, as everything does, because that allows you to step away, to disassociate maybe some things that you have brought from your past into a situation, right? We call it our background of obviousness, how we were raised, can muddy somebody else's perspective. So a lot of times, I mean, if you think about, if you were talking about two teams, two rivalries, and you cheer for one team and your other friend cheers for another team, your perspective is going to be a little muddied because they feel the same way about their team as you do yours. And so it's important to step back and have an objective, unbiased view when somebody's presenting their side or their emotions or what's coming up for them. It's important to almost pull yourself away from your ego and allow yourself to breathe. And as we breathe, we can receive information and really see what's coming up. That's where spending time, you know, like I said, spending time with yourself uh, and realizing when you feel emotions, when you feel your body tightening up, that's probably means that you're being affected by someone else's perspective. And so you can say, okay, this is coming up for me in your mind. And you can step back and go, okay, I'm gonna deal with this after, but I'm gonna hear them with a full perspective, with a full heart, and their perspective can be come to me like clean instead of muddy. And that way you can accept them for their story. And you may or may not agree with it. That's fine, but it's how you react to it. I was speaking to one of my clients recently, and we were working with the trigger, with something that triggers you, right? And he said, well, you could either have a rash reaction or you could have a thoughtful, appropriate response. And when you hear those two phrases, which would you prefer to have, right? It's like both can happen like that when you're trained. You know, when you're untrained, you have a rash reaction. When you're trained, you can have a thoughtful, appropriate response. Sometimes that takes a little space, but after a while, after you become understanding with your breath, pausing, creating that space, it can happen very fast. It's just like any muscle, you keep on practicing it. So know when triggers come up for you. That's an awareness. Understand when other people's triggers are coming up. Understand that, you know, if you know how to trigger someone, understand that that's power, and that's something that, you know, really you should examine with your relationship with them and why you want to trigger them as well.
I love it. It really all comes back down to the breaths and actually just taking a bit of a pause and taking a step back. I think that's just so important because a lot of times we just kind of jump straight in without actually kind of thinking and reflecting. And I think that breath really just gives us a little bit more space to think. For example, if someone who has very low self-esteem and always kind of is self-critical and judging themselves, whether in the mirror, in conversations with other people, how can they change the way they view themselves?
One thing that we work on is just the small wins. Like, you know, everybody has something positive about them, you know, and if you don't feel you do, then ask a friend, ask somebody, ask a loved one, like, you know, I don't feel like I have any redeeming qualities, you know, tell me, you know, what do you see in me, you know? But it's a lot of people will do amazing things and not even give themselves credit for it. And it takes sometimes like a coach or a friend to see someone, you know, talk about perspective. Sometimes when you're in it, you don't what do they say? You can't read the label on the jar because you're in the jar. So sometimes you need that outside source to tell you, you know, that you are worthy. And then at that point, like I said about the courage wolf and the fear wolf, you have to start buying into that. You have to start buying into that, self-confident, positive talk. And it is a mindset. There's no doubt. We have a thing called a witness, which plays out in our big four mental toughness. And the witness really plays into, am I thinking positive or am I thinking negative? And when when you start thinking negative, that's when a mantra would be great. But it is about everyone wants the whole world to be perfect and feel like everything has to be positive. That's not, unfortunately, how the world is, but we can control our thoughts. We can control what's going on in our mind. And if we can just see ourselves, a small part of us that's worthy, then maybe you can see two things that are worthy, and then it can roll your outlook forward in a positive manner. I talk to people and coach people, and they'll say something like, that's amazing. They're like, yeah, you know what? I never even thought of it that way. And it is, I mean, even considering wanting to be positive is positive, right? So you can even get as micro as you want to be able to find some good to change it around. And, a lot of it has to do with somatic movement. We talked about the physical mountain, or getting outside or going for a walk. If you start feeling like, you're feeling like unmotivated and you feel like you can't do something, I would say change your state. Get up, do some squats, just move around. If you change your state, you can change your state of mind. Change your posture. A lot of times we find ourselves like this on the computer. Change your state. Set an alarm. If you have a breathing practice, have the alarm go off at the worst possible time, so you should breathe. So I think I really, if you can't get outside, if it's dark, if you live in Sweden and it's wintertime, take a vitamin D supplement. It's very important to get vitamin D for your health. I don't know. There's just so many things that you can play into it. You know, if there are people with low self-esteem, I would say, dream big and start micro goaling things. Start chopping things down in bite-sized chunks. Give yourself something to work towards. Even if it's small to you or small to someone else, it could be big to you, and it could change your whole outlook.
Definitely, and I really resonate with changing your state. As Anthony Robbins once said, motion creates emotion. And for me, I use the smile as for mental toughness, because that tricks your brain into a different place, actually embracing the suck, as they call it. I want to go into what you said earlier about the witness. For those that don't know what the witness is, maybe you could expand on what the witness is and how can people engage it more.
Yeah, so the witness is probably the one practice in Unbeatable Mind that I use. Man, probably if we have 10,000 thoughts today, hopefully my witness works 9,000 of the 10,000. Basically, if you think about when you have a thought, when you think about it, it's like metacognition, right? It's like thinking about thoughts. You're like, whoa, that just blew my mind. But that's what we're doing. We're putting thought to thought. So when you have a thought or a reaction or something enters your mind, you create a witness in your mind. And so it's a little guy up, it could be a bouncer at a nightclub saying, yep, you're in, you can go. No, you're negative, you're out, And so, when you put thought to thought, it's empowering, because you're not just allowing things to go through and you're not just reacting. You're actually sitting back and saying, is this something that would propel me towards my goal? Or is this something that's going to hold me back into what I always have been? So the witness actually plays bouncer on what stays and what goes. And the way that you can, interdict those negative thoughts and redirect them with a mantra. We talked about mantras a lot, but really just having a saying that maybe has worked for you in the past to change your state of being, or saying, nope, that's negative. No, I don't have time for you right now. And so basically the witness process, we break down into an acronym called WIRM, which is WIRM, witness, interdict, redirect, and maintain. So we witness our thoughts because we have a breath pattern, right? Because we're breathing, so we can witness our thoughts. So we witness our thoughts, we interdict those negative thoughts, we redirect them positively with a mantra, and then we maintain that positive attitude. And so a lot of times this can be very helpful when we're working on a project and we have to get the project done, and you have your Instagram banners popping up on your phone over here. It's a time when you can witness your thoughts. You can interdict and say, if I check this, it's going to slow me down. You can redirect. I need to get back because this is important to me, and maintain. That's mental toughness. I mean, saying no to something that's right in front of you, something that's shiny, and actually getting back to what's important. That's mental toughness. Every day, um, I use mental toughness when you're trying to open up a bag and it's not opening up. And instead of throwing it across the room, you just take a breath and you go, okay, let me get a pair of scissors, and I come back to it. And that's witnessing your actions. One thing that I say that I love about Unbeatable Mind is we have a tool that puts space between your thoughts and your actions. How many times in your life do you wish you had that? I know I started this when I was 43 or 40, whatever, 41 in back 2013. And I wish I had 41 years of my witness. He just joined me. And sometimes he takes a vacation. And when I recapitulate the day, say, yep, could have used a witness there. That was probably the time that he took the day off or went to lunch. So hopefully that clears up. It's something that's so personal. I use it so much. Sometimes I kind of glance over it because I use it so much. But it is super important. Just creating that space allows you to see your emotions, allows you to see how your reactions are. And as I said, the more you use it, the faster that gap becomes between what happens in your reaction.
It's such a great process, and I'm trying to develop my own witness as well, having began on this journey just last year. And it's just like anything, like doing a new exercise, doing cleans and snatches. It takes a bit of time to get that muscle memory and that kind of new pattern happening. I need to teach the witness to my daughter because she does that. She, being 3 years old, the bag kind of when she throws it across the room. So it's gonna take her a few years. So speaking of the witness and speaking of managing your thoughts as well, you mentioned earlier about attending Kokoro. So I definitely want to get into Kokoro right now because I myself am going to go into 20XL next year. So maybe you can share with the audience what Kokoro is and what your experience was like.
Yeah, so Kokoro is a camp. As I mentioned earlier, it's melding the heart, mind, and action. Kokoro is a 50-hour Hell Week Navy SEAL experience, and it's been, people have called it the hardest civilian boot camp there is or experience. So back in 2015, I trained with a friend of mine, and we went in together. Which was, if you're going to go to any camp, any experience, to have what we call a swim buddy to train with, to keep you accountable, is super important. Because even in the darkest of times, you can look over and see them, and they can give you power, right? So Kokoro was amazing. We say it's the best thing I never want to do again, because it was 50 hours of mental toughness, of getting physically beat down. And no matter how in shape, ready you are physically, they'll scrape it away where you're going to have to start depending on teammates. You're going to start having to ask for help. You're going to have to look out for others, right? I mean, they have us, even the simplest of things, of changing from what we wore, from our boots and our ruck pants to PT gear, to workout gear, and then back to what we had to wear. We had to look out to make sure that everyone's belt loops were good, because you can't see behind you. So that's where your teammate helps out. I mean, it's the simple things like that that actually transcend 50 hours, and then past that, when you get out, you start looking out for others in the simplest of ways. We did everything from log PT to Murph to, being in the surf. We started with 13 people and we finished with 10. And it was just an amazing experience. I always say that mantras are found in the darkest of times. And I probably found about 10 mantras during that time. And it's 50 hours. You're not sleeping. You're awake the whole time. You do a 20-mile hike with a backpack. It's it's go, all the time, no matter what the weather is. Um, but it's such a great experience that it almost seems like it didn't even happen. It's like it's when I think back, like I said, it's the best and worst experience I've ever had in my life.
Beyond Kokoro, what other epic feats have you done? Have you gone on any expeditions, and how have you, have you used any of your mental toughness skills to do anything else?
Yeah, so I've done quite a few expeditions actually. I've climbed Mount Whitney in California, which is the highest peak in the lower 48 states. Um, the Patagonia Trail is amazing, probably the best hike I've ever done in my life. Machu Picchu Trail. Those are all great, but they're also that was all pre Unbeatable Mind. Post Unbeatable Mind, like that was we have a pre UM life and a post UM life. Um, in 2015, the beginning of the year 2016, I think it was either 16, 17. Anyway, I filmed a documentary with 10 amputees from San Antonio, and we climbed Kilimanjaro. And so, not a technical climb. I think you and I could go right now. Let's fly to Africa and do it. It's pretty straightforward. There's like one technical piece in the whole thing, but to go up with um, 10 people who had limitations, um, certainly didn't show me that they had limitations, but what they had to go through. I pulled a lot from them, and I gave them some mindset stuff as well. It was a lot easier knowing what they were going through. Like, especially at the end of the day, things were a little slower. They had to make sure they were watching out for blisters on some of the places where they were amputated, and it was super powerful. And it's one of those things where, sure, I had a lot of skills that I could offer them, but sometimes you just shut up and watch how people get through things, and to see them on top uh, of Africa was amazing. So that's probably the you know Kokoro was huge. That I made a lot of friends in this Kilimanjaro. I didn't even know any of these people, and we flew halfway across the world and did this venture, and all great people, super strong, and to see how they handled it was great. Um, you know, I've done events like 29029. Jesse Itzler has an event where he rents a mountain for a weekend, and you do the same elevation as Everest. Obviously not as high, but in Vermont we did 17 laps going up Stratton from Vermont in I did it in 24 hours. You have 36 hours to do it, but basically you go up 17 times, and that equals the elevation of Everest. Luckily, we're not coming down; it's a gondola down, so that always seems like that's the hardest part, is going down. Um, I've done that a couple times, and I think it's just important for people to put things out there. Even if you even if you don't think necessarily you can achieve it, right? You got to put something out there. The best part about any of these events we do is the training leading up to it. Getting into that ready state, getting ready to, being, especially when you go through with people that you're training with, because you don't want to let them down, and can be accountable to them. And then micro goals. So you look at the big four of positive, or big four mental toughness, and it rolls into all of this, right? It's like you're climbing Kilimanjaro, you got to breathe. Chances are you're probably out of breath with the elevation that changes. And positively stated, right? Every step could be tough. You could be walking on volcanic ash, and you slide from, you wake up at midnight to be able to get up to the top by sunrise, and you hit storms going up. You got to stay positive. Visualizing yourself at the top of the mountain, man, that's easy. You just see yourself in that picture that everyone takes at the top of Kilimanjaro. You just visualize yourself up there with your poles high in the air, and then micro goals every step. That's, or top of this mountain, but there's other mountains past it. So it's amazing once you start putting this stuff into practice. When you go back over your life, you can say, oh yeah, this is how I used it. I didn't know what it was, but this is how I used it.
And as Steve Jobs once said, you can only join the dots backwards. Everything kind of makes sense in retrospect. So as a takeaway piece for people listening out there and inspired by this message of the approach in the five mountains, how can they start to integrate maybe one principle, maybe some of the principles, or maybe even just one principle into their lives to become a better version of themselves?
I really like the idea of breath work as just as a foundation, and say they already have breath work. That's great. The witness is really, I think, where the money is. Just witnessing your thoughts, putting a thought to thought, and maybe you do it once today, and then tomorrow maybe it's 3 times. It's the idea of putting thought to thought and then recapitulating your day and say, did I do it? So I've given you 5 takeaways. I know they all kind of play with each other, but breath at the foundation of breath is the most important thing. And then going from there, layering, as you would your AM ritual, like I said. So I think breath and probably being able to control it in the toughest of times is probably the best takeaway that I could give.
I love it. Thank you very much, Boomer.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. A wise man once said, "You make a new life by making new choices." Now, if you know that what you eat matters, if you know that health comes from healthy living, then the time to make new choices is now. And just imagine owning the summit for life. Click the button for more. Maybe you know our stories. Luke and I lost family to cancer, and we wish we would have known sooner what you are learning here today. So please, share the summit, take action, and let's support each other. Thank you. This is Toby and Luke signing off, and we can't wait to see you for the next presentation.